Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Wednesday. I hope all of you are doing good. And since half of the country is like under severe storm threats, I hope you're all safe and hopefully the power lasts for the rest of this live stream. So tonight I have a really cool guest on. It's Steven Stambolier. He's a 2A attorney and his channel is called 2A Law. You can actually click on it as a link right in the title of this video. So make sure you check out what he's doing on YouTube. So if you look at the title of this stream, it says, will this lawsuit stop gun control? Dude, that literally has to be like one of the most popular questions I get asked. Like, we'll sue for this, we'll sue for that, this will end it, when will it be over? And I'm really excited to have my attorney friend on to kind of talk about that, what it means to sue for the Second Amendment and where he thinks we're heading. And we can even talk about a few cases and stuff that he's done in the past, kind of the general feel of everything going on with the Second Amendment in the courts, because he is quite the acclaimed attorney and has been around the country a lot, like a lot, doing some awesome stuff for the Second Amendment. So with that said, before we get going, I want to thank all of you for the many ways you help support the channel. Thank you to all of my YouTube channel members, which you can join to help support the channel, get access to extra perks, as well as all my supporters on Patreon, as well as Locals, which is a different site, censorship free. Make sure you check out my Locals and Rumble because I do stream there live, and we will try to answer any super chats that come in. And there's no ad reads because you guys are my sponsors. So thank you. And with that, I am going to bring Steven Stambolier with the 2A Law YouTube channel on. How's it going, man?
Man, it's going pretty good. What about you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good. Thanks for having me on. I really enjoy doing this kind of stuff and talking to people about, the Second Amendment, number one, but what litigation's like and what I'm doing, what some of the other attorneys that I work with are doing, and, how we're bringing pain to the government. That's kind of what we do.
Good. I like that.
Yeah.
So, look, yeah, pain, especially when it comes to their assault on the Second Amendment.
Absolutely.
So I kind of introduced your YouTube channel. You have a YouTube channel you started fairly recently called 2A Law. So
Yep.
I encourage everyone to follow you there. I know you do live streams as well as regular videos, right?
Yes, sir, I do.
Cool. I wanted to give you that plug right at the beginning because I've been watching your stuff lately and I think there's a lot of good content.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I try to stay with Second Amendment stuff, but there's so many other things going on with all the Trump lawsuits and all the litigation trying to stop Doge and trying to stop Trump and the immigration stuff. And I'm just kind of like, oh, well, this is interesting to me, at least, as the son of an immigrant, right?
Yeah.
Who came over legally, by the way. So I just have kind of expanded a little bit and I'm doing just all legal stuff.
Okay, cool. So you're a Second Amendment attorney. You've done some of the biggest Second Amendment cases, all over the country. And we can get into those maybe in a little bit. But I just kind of want to start off, since you're a cool dude, and that's why I'm glad to have you on here, because you're like a lawyer, right?
Yeah, I am.
But here's the thing, though. You hear lawyer, and you just think like stuffy, and
Yeah.
a lot of times, for the most part, there's like a little FUD in there, and it's just kind of like. And look, I know some awesome lawyers. I do. But you guys are like the exception, not the norm. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So I tell people that I don't usually like attorneys. There are a lot of attorneys, not all of the attorneys, because I'm not like this. I'm not in it for just simply money. And if we could take a minute, I'll tell you why I'm not just in it for money, but I'm in it for the cause. And the cause is expanding the Second Amendment and returning it to what it was for the founders in 1791. I have lost probably close to $900,000 in attorney's fees, winning cases, but not being able to get reimbursed my attorney's fees from the government. I'm going to give you 3 examples. Well, I'll give you 4 examples real quick. My first example is Roberts v. Connors down in Hawaii, where we sued over their stun gun ban. The district court refused to hear our motion for summary judgment and stayed our case. Well, in the meantime, Hawaii legislature repealed the stun gun ban. So that cost me about $225,000 in attorney's fees. The bump stock case, we won the bump stock case, right? And I've got a pending motion for attorney's fees in the DC district court. It's about $90,000. It's not that much, right? So then we have Teeter v. Lopez out in Hawaii in the Ninth Circuit over the butterfly knife ban. It was the first case that was decided post Bruin on what kind of arm is protected, and we won. Well, then Hawaii changed their law and allowed all butterfly knives to be completely legal now. And I've got about $400,000 in that case.
Wow.
And then I know it gets worse, man. And then we've got Yukatake, which is another Ninth Circuit case that we won. Alan Beck and I won, and we haven't filed the motion for attorney's fees yet, but that's going to be about, I don't know, 400. It's actually more than 900,000. It's so depressing. So there you go. I'm not in it for the money.
Well, I appreciate you doing it, man. So you mentioned something that's kind of just the core fundamental part of this channel. It's actually the only reason I do this channel at all, and that's the founding documents, like Declaration of Independence, beautiful, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution, 1788. Then in 1789, they wrote the Bill of Rights and ratified it as part of the supreme law of the land in 1791. And I sit here and I think about this, and I tell people this all the time in my live streams. I'm like, yeah, guys, like the 2A EDU channel shouldn't even have to exist. 2A lawyers shouldn't have to exist. This shouldn't be a political thing. There shouldn't be any of this. And I just want to run this by you real quick, just to kind of start this conversation. So the Constitution of the United States of America, right? Mm-hmm. It says so in itself that it's the supreme law of the land. Is that correct?
That's what it says.
Okay. And the Second Amendment, the second time it was amended, is now part of the Constitution. So the Constitution literally says a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So I sit here and think to myself, no law degree. I did go to a community college for a short time years ago, but I'm like, dude, a fourth grader could literally understand that. Shall not be infringed, which to me means if there was even one gun control law in this whole country, that would be unconstitutional. Are we on the same page?
Yeah, so far. I mean, everything you're saying tracks with what I believe.
So why is it that we have people, wearing black robes, the Supreme Court and the inferior courts? Why do we have to keep going to court, to keep suing over every little thing, over every big thing? Why is it that we have very, very strange rulings written by the majority and Gorsuch, where there's these weird analogies with IKEA tables and artifact nouns? And I covered some of this in my live stream, so the guys should know what I'm talking about. How do we even get to the place, and why are we to the place where we have all of this when our supreme law of the land just says, like, shall not be infringed? Can you help me understand that?
Man, if I could help you understand that, I would be sitting on a beach somewhere with millions and millions of dollars. No, I can't help you understand that, other than to say there's a lot of people in this country that do not want us to have guns. If that's for nefarious purposes or their own idyllic communist vision, I'm not sure which one it is. I'll tell you, I read that that Bondi v. Vanderstock case, and I grew up in Mississippi. I have a Mississippi, private school education, but it's still Mississippi, right? Went to law school in Mississippi. So, I'm probably as dumb as you think I am.
Shout out to all the Southern boys watching.
Right.
We love the South.
Yeah, I know. I loved going to school there, and I loved growing up there. But let me tell you, I read that opinion and I'm like, what is an artifact noun? I don't understand what this is. And like, I kept reading it and I felt dumber and dumber and dumber. And then I got to Justice Thomas's opinion, and he basically is like, oh, you just made all this stuff up. And then I thought, oh, I'm not dumb.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I really did. Like, there was some big part of my education, because I grew up in Mississippi, was missing. And what was that part? I don't know. But then I read Justice Thomas, and he just, put a light bulb going off in my head, and I felt better.
Yeah, and I read some of Alito's dissent, and he was basically going through saying much of the same, but he also threw in there, he said, yeah, with this, I don't know how anyone's ever going to be able to successfully sue and win in these cases again, is the essence of what he said. And it just gets so crazy. So we did have Heller, which was a very important decision, for the Second Amendment, that did establish it as an individual right.
Yes.
And that you don't have to necessarily serve in a militia, and that it's not like tied to the National Guard. And that's what people were trying to say, at that time and before then. We also have the so-called Bruin case that, as far as the way I understood it, and a lot of legal people did, that was supposed to, for the most part, end about 99%, if not all, gun control, because
It
we
should
had
have.
yeah.
Yeah, it should have. Because, Bruin, what I read Bruin to say is you have to go back to 1791, and what the founders would have tolerated as a gun law are the only types of gun laws that we can tolerate now, that the Constitution would allow. Period. End of story. There's nothing post 1791. I mean, maybe you get to 1800, maybe you get to 1820, but you're certainly not going to go to 1934 and say, oh, the NFA, we can uphold this because it's a long-standing law. Prior to Bruin, we lost a case. This is just such a dumb thing to tell you, but I'll just tell you. We have another case in the Ninth Circuit, Fouts v. Bonta, which is over batons, collapsible batons, sticks, essentially.
Wow.
And Judge Benitez, which is a phenomenal judge, by the way, he ruled against us the first time, saying under current Ninth Circuit precedent, the ban on batons in California is a, quote, long-standing law, and therefore you lose. As a matter of law, you lose. And so we appealed it. And in the meantime, Bruin came out and it's like, no. That's not long-standing. Let me show you what long-standing is. Go back to 1791. And then he ruled in our favor after he did the Bruin analysis, found that there was nothing in 1791 that prohibited someone from carrying a stick. And now we're on appeal again. And in the Ninth Circuit has a perfect record of ruling against the Second Amendment. I've won in the Ninth Circuit in Young, Yukatake, and Teeter. Young got overturned in Bonk. Teeter got overturned in Bonk. Yukatake's about to go in Bonk. And then Fouts, if we win in Fouts, I assume we're going to get overturned in Bonk. They have a perfect record of ruling against the Second Amendment. I had to be careful what I say.
Yeah. So when I hear that, I'm familiar with that as well.
Yeah.
People call the Ninth Circuit many things. This is a family-friendly channel, so I'll just call them the Ninth Circuit, I guess. But
yeah.
They call them a lot of things. But they're supposed to be, and I say supposed to be, allegedly, they're supposed to be in the United States of America, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to take my passport to California, but I mean, you feel if you ever go there, it feels like you should take your passport to get in.
Well, I covered a case in Hawaii on this channel. Oh gosh, it's probably been a year ago now, where they were talking about a guy that was carrying a gun in Hawaii. And the courts in Hawaii, I believe it was the state Supreme Court, but it was still a court in the United States, said they followed the spirit of aloha rather than the United States Constitution.
That's State v. Wilson.
Do you remember that case?
Yeah, I cited it. I argued a case in New Jersey on Monday, and I cited State v. Wilson. The Supreme Court, they petitioned for a writ of certiorari at the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court's like, we're not going to take it now, but if you go back again and you invoke the spirit of aloha and the law of the splintered paddle, we're probably going to take this case on final judgment. They just don't. The Supreme Court doesn't like taking cases in an interlocutory posture. And what that means is if you go up on a preliminary injunction or if you go up on a motion that's been decided, but the case isn't over yet, the Supreme Court just doesn't like those kinds of cases. They will take them, but not normally.
Well, and so let's talk about the Supreme Court taking cases. We have a lot of stuff going on in Michigan. It's been very tumultuous the last 2 years. After 40 years of the Republicans controlling the legislature, the Democrats enjoyed a trifecta for 2 years there. Lucky the Republicans have taken back the House, which, look, I'm not a Republican or a Democrat. I actually can't stand that there's this two political party choice. I actually reject all of that. But at the same time, usually the Republicans are less worse, and but just like last year, there were some pretty bad gun control laws that went into effect in Michigan, signed into law, and I've covered them extensively here. I think more than anybody. And one of the number one comments I get from my viewers is, "Who's suing? When are we going to sue? Sue right now. The courts will throw it out. It'll be gone." So with that said, I don't know, though, because Michigan on the state level is a very liberal Supreme Court. I've had many local attorneys here say, yeah, you don't want to be heard in front of them. And then now look what just happened on this so-called supermajority U.S. Supreme Court. So with my whole little long thing there, what do you think about that whole concept? We have to sue now, but then this happens, and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly gives you pause, right?
Yeah, actually.
Yeah, and I know I'm right there with you. I read another case from the Supreme Court today from the Fifth Circuit who overturned an FDA rule on vaping, uh, and the Supreme Court overturned the Fifth Circuit unanimously. And so I really liked what the Fifth Circuit said in that case. And then I read the Supreme Court case this morning, and I'm like, what are y'all doing on this? Like, you want to give the FDA all of this power? I thought we were reining in the administrative state, and then the Supreme Court released this opinion today that's basically like, administrative state, have fun. So, your point about Michigan, let me just tell you something about lawsuits. I file a lot of lawsuits, New York, Hawaii, California, New Jersey, DC. I'm all over the place. People get so upset with me. They call me and cuss me out, like legitimately, and say, you're not doing anything in XYZ state. And I'm like, you want to be a plaintiff? Well, no, I've got too much to lose and too much going on. I'm like, I can't just come into your state without a plaintiff and file a lawsuit. No attorney can. Unless I have plaintiffs willing to stand up and be counted and say, I'll put my name on that line. I'll sign your declarations. I'll tell you my story. Let's go. Let's sue. I can't do anything. I mean, this is a really big thing. It happened to me in New York, where I had people dog cussing me on Reddit of all places, saying, he's not doing enough. And I've been trying to get them to come help me. I'm thinking, and I made that comment. It's like, what's your name? What's your phone number? Let's talk. No, not me. I'm too busy. Don't you say I'm not doing it. Man, it happens nonstop. But if we don't have plaintiffs, I can't do anything for you.
Okay, so all of you who are watching now, and by the way, shout out to the replay crew. Make sure all of you chime in down in the comments afterwards. I'll tell you something that's not like, look, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not able to go into courts and file lawsuits, but I just had a special project I was trying to working on from the channel. I had heard some rumors from some people, different viewers on my channel and people I was talking to around town saying they were running into all kinds of trouble with trying to get permits in a certain part of the state. And this police department was doing this and that. And I said, look, guys, I'll try to get to the bottom of this. Maybe if I do a good report on it, we can shed some light. Maybe some people can start noticing this and getting involved. So I did like an all call. And I basically begged all my viewers to throw it out there. Let me know if this is happening to you. Let me know if you can just tell me anything, because I want to put together an actual report on this topic and do a video, maybe even a series with all the horror stories I'd heard. And I had like 3 people respond out of like the thousands of people that saw the video. 2 of them were like, yeah, I heard from a friend of a step cousin's niece that happened, but that's it. And I'm like, okay, cool. I've been hearing the same. And then one person's like, yeah, all this happened. I'm like, well, can I talk to you more about it? So for my story? And they're like, no, I won't talk to you. So what do you all think that's watching about that? It's like, what are we going to do, guys? Like, everybody wants to sue, but like nobody will be a plaintiff. Nobody will even talk to a journalist or whatever I'm considered to try to expose it. What do you think, man? It's getting tough.
Yeah, no, I mean, your experience tracks with experience all over the country, and it doesn't even have to be Second Amendment litigation. It's all kinds of litigation. A lot of these people will literally join an organization, any organization. It could be Defenders of Wildlife, whatever it is, and they think, well, I paid my $50. I'm a member, and that's it. I don't want to have any personal stake in litigation anywhere. I just want to pay someone and have it be done. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. Or maybe fortunately, that's not how it works. But that's just, this is the way it is.
And I think most of my viewers understand that. But I wanted to bring this topic up. So when you all are talking to your friends and your family and people in your hometown, it's like, dude, people can send people a lifeboat, but you got to remind people if they've got issues, they actually have to get involved and come forth. And it would depend what the issue is. But even with Second Amendment issues, there's a lot of gun rights groups out there, 2A groups, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's many of them, and all of them sue in different states over different issues. And but everyone needs plaintiffs.
Yeah, and then that's what's tough. So with that said, I don't know, man. Like, here's my approach. And this might just be because I don't have enough money to sponsor someone else's lawsuit. I'm not a lawyer, so I couldn't even work pro bono on a case if I wanted to. But I take the legislative approach. And I actually, even before that, first and foremost, I try to take the grassroots approach and get we the people but behind the Second Amendment, because I think ultimately politics are downstream from culture.
Yep.
And I go to Lansing, Michigan, my state capital, constantly talking to legislators, bringing them on this show to do videos. I do interviews. I report on every little thing. I like to kind of stop stuff. I think the best bet is to stop it before it becomes law, instead of just like, oh, ho hum, who cares? Let it pass.
100%.
We'll just sue.
Yeah. It is so much cheaper to do what you just said than it is to file litigation. I mean, I just told you how I lost like, $900,000 in attorney's fees. And that's what you're looking at when you take these cases. I mean, you're not going to spend 900 grand on one case, most likely, but it's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or I could take $25,000 and spend it on, lobbying the Michigan legislature, flying out some of my people, sitting them down with whoever needs to be spoken with, and then go from there, and then hopefully kill a bill before it becomes a law.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's what I do. I'm not a lobbyist, meaning I'm not registered. I'm just a regular old citizen. I'm a landscaper and have a YouTube channel. And I just walk around the halls of the Anderson House office building and then the Senate office building and just literally walk in their offices and talk to them. And I have conversations with legislators in the elevator, walking to and from the different buildings. I mean, that's how a lot of effective work actually gets done, So with that said, what do you think's going on right now? Like, people like to, it's always an us versus them thing. And I totally get it. That's just how people naturally are. Like, we are on our side and then the other side is them, which that's fair enough. So if you want to look at it in those terms, it's like we are supposed to have the Supreme Court of the United States right now by a 6-3 majority. And then we have rules, executive actions, executive order rules by, I used to call him the current former vice president when Biden was in office. Now I call him the former vice president, because he was the former vice president. That's all I'll really give him. So he puts a rule at his directive through the ATF for these so-called ghost guns. Now, this is a rule.
Yeah.
Well, what my viewers, and I see a couple guys even in the chat saying, how does a rule have the force and effect of law? And then how does the Supreme Court hold these rules with like so much esteem, even under this conservative court? Can you help with that a little bit?
Yeah. So the first answer that I have is the administrative state disgusts me. Absolutely disgusts me. It's not in the Constitution. The Congress writes the laws. The president signs the law and executes the law, and then the judiciary, says what the law is. That's what they say. Nowhere do we have an administrative state, an agency that gets to write its own laws, enforce its own laws, and then come back and tell us what their laws say they are, what like be the judiciary branch. So basically an administrative agency is all three of the branches, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative, all rolled into one. And I think it's gross, and I think it's un-American, and it's not what we voted for. But the courts have allowed this to happen. Congress has delegated some of their authority, either quietly, like implicitly delegated, or expressly delegated their authority to these various agencies when they created them, to take congressional silence and then interpret what Congress meant to say, or should have said, or would have said, or could have said, and come up with these nonsense rules. My opinion on it, if Congress wanted to, let's take bump stocks, for instance. I think, bump stocks are what they are. I've never fired a bump stock. I don't have any desire to fire a bump stock. I'd rather have an M4, an M16, something that's legitimate select fire. But a lot of people have bump stocks. That's fine. I filed Yeah, I mean, so a lot of people have them, and I think it's
Yeah.
fine. I think it's great. It's a way to shoot faster than I could bump fire it myself. I filed a lawsuit in the DC District Court back in, I think it was 2018 or 2019. I don't even remember. It feels like it was a lifetime ago.
Yeah.
If Congress wanted to ban bump stocks, and I'm not saying they should, if Congress wanted to do it, all they had to do is amend 26 USC 5845 or 41, whatever it is, and say, by the way, machine guns that fire one shot by a single function of the trigger aren't the only things that we consider machine guns. We also consider bump stocks to be machine guns. But they didn't do it because they couldn't do it, because they didn't have the votes to do it. So what do? They let the agency do it. And then you've got some, I got to be careful with my words, idiot, that's polite, right?
Yeah,
That is drafting a rule at the ATF with all of his little buddies or her buddies or whoever's buddies, and then he signs it, and now we've got a bump stock rule that basically classified 500,000 bump stocks as a machine gun overnight. So if you got a bump stock, you're a felon. And then it takes us how long? Like, we got that opinion last year. Was it last year we got that opinion?
yeah.
So from 2018 to 2024, 6 years, we have our property taken from us under penalty of $250,000 fine, 10 years in prison, and a felony. If I get a felony, I lose my law license.
Yeah.
And I'm licensed in like 30 federal courts, bro. So if I lose it in one, I lose it in all of them. I'm done.
Yeah, you're done, because you literally, like, it's bad enough that you're not getting paid for a lot of the cases that you spent lots of money and time on, but you have to have a little money just to eat and like have the electricity for this camera you're running,
Yeah. It'd be nice.
So with that said, we now live in and I talk about this on my streams all the time. Like, so these guys are like, man, do these guys watch each other's stuff? Well, we do, but we literally are pretty in sync on this, because I look at this administrative state where they talk about like the separation of powers. We're supposed to have 3 separate branches of government. We talk about checks of balance. I look at these bureaucracies as like a 4th, completely unchecked and unequal branch, because it's like it wraps up all 3 branches within itself.
Yeah, that is legitimately what it does.
Now, here's the thing. We look at the courts, and now there's another thing lately I've noticed with the courts a lot. And it also applies to Second Amendment litigation, but with many other things, like the fact that federal judges are pretty much nullifying every one of Trump's EOs within minutes or hours of him signing them. And we talk about, yes, the Supreme Court is supposed to be checks and balances, but I'm hearing a lot of people lately, and even a lot of my conservative friends, I think, falling into a trap saying, well, the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land, and it is the most powerful of the branches. And like, whatever it says goes. It doesn't matter what the president or the Congress says. What do you think about that dynamic?
We have 3 co-equal branches of government. I mean, it's really tough. I mean, of what I want to say, it's really tough. There will come a point in time where the Supreme Court makes an order that the people will not follow. Because again, it's like, who has more power? None of them have more power. The president has a third, Congress has a third, and the Supreme Court has a third, but they all have different types of power. So it's not really a third. It's just they're all co-equal. So, I mean, like, so let's take this Judge Boasberg in DC. I know for a fact I've had a FOIA case in front of him before. He ordered Trump to turn the plane that's carrying all these criminals back, or all these criminals to El Salvador. He turned the plane around. It's like, what authority do you have to tell the president to turn a plane around? He tried to argue that he had this authority to do so. And I'm thinking, look, I'm a law and order guy. I like to say I will follow every judge's order, because that's what I believe. I believe that our system is set up that way, and that's how the system works. But you're telling me that you have the authority, and the judge actually said in his hearing, this is my extraterritorial authority. And I'm thinking, what are you talking about? Your extraterritorial authority? where does your extraterritorial authority end? So if like you're going to tell someone, like let's say they're operating a war in Iran, okay, and Hegseth wants to come out and run a mission in Iran, he's got to go get Judge Boasberg's authority to do so and clear his authority with him, his extraterritorial authority. No, like he doesn't have any authority to tell Hegseth, you can't run this operation the way you want to run it. You have to run it the way I want you to run it. Sitting back here in my black robe in the DC District Court. Like, dude, it's such a bizarre time we're living in. Like this timeline is weird.
It is weird because people literally have the ability to get more information at their fingertips with less effort than they ever have before. But it seems like the more these people know, they just have to keep one-upping each other in this attempt to be heady, or they get almost like more stupid. So I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, so if you go back to 1803, Marbury v. Madison, very important case for many reasons. One of the main things I like to cite from it is it says all laws that are repugnant to the Constitution, those are void.
That's what they said.
Right?
That's what they said.
Okay, so if the Constitution itself says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Yes.
And then we have Supreme Court precedent that says if the law is repugnant to aforementioned document, then it's void.
Yes.
Why are we here? Again, back to that.
So let me answer your question by citing to that exact same case where a little bit further on, they say it's our job to say what the law is. So what the Supreme Court has done is say all laws repugnant to the Constitution are void, but it's also our job to say what the law is. So all they have to do is say, the Constitution doesn't actually say that. It says something else. It says shall not be infringed. But as you can see through Bruen, the founders tolerated some type of infringements. And therefore, whatever you're discussing right now in Michigan, it's just not an infringement. And therefore, they can go all the way and twist themselves up into a pretzel saying how this infringement that you know is an infringement isn't really an infringement because it doesn't burden you that much, or it's just like the law in 1791 that disarmed, certain bad people.
Yeah, so if you look at that, because they do that, they say, well, that's not actually an infringement. Let's define infringe. And it reminds me, you remember when Bill Clinton was in that whole snafu he was in, and he was under testimony to being deposed, and his famous line was, "It depends on what the definition of the word is."
Yep. Is. That's right.
And we're kind of there though right now when it comes to the Second Amendment, aren't we?
Yes. Man, I had a case Monday, and I can't talk about it yet. I mean, it was just an absolute travesty of a case, and I would love to tell you about it. Maybe at some point I can talk to you about it.
Sure.
But super infringement was told it's not an infringement at all. I mean, gaslighting me. I've never been able to use that word before. Yep. Gaslighting me, telling me this is not an infringement.
So not an infringement, right? Okay.
Like verbatim, not an infringement. And you might ask, what's this case about? This guy had a gun and wanted a permit to get another gun because you had to get a permit to get another gun. And judge is like, it's not an infringement. I'll leave it at that. I can't say anymore. I know it. I'm sorry for even bringing that up, but.
Okay, well, we'll go back to the Vanderstadt case just a little bit because this is just the bigger underlying principle that I'm having a good time talking about here. You look at the Vanderstadt case. A lot of my friends say this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment to AEDU, nothing at all. This is just an Administrative Procedures Act case, and I get it, like prima facie on its face, that's what it is. But I argue this is a Second Amendment case too, because Neil Gorsuch and the majority cited the 1968 GCA more times than I could count.
Yes.
And that's the Gun Control Act that they're saying that this rule does indeed comply with, at least in part. So why is it that they would be citing a Gun Control Act of 1968 like that's the longstanding precedent of the law of the land? So now they're bringing in firearm statutes, but I didn't see any of the Supreme Court justices even mention the Second Amendment in any of their.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it's it's a bad explanation, but this is true.
Okay.
The Gun Control Act is what gives the authority for them to regulate the guns. And so if they have a gun statute or a gun regulation, like what the ATF's done with their final rule, implementing the Gun Control Act. So this is what an agency does. It takes the statute, excuse me, and then it implements that statute through its rules and regulations. Goodness,
supposedly.
Well, that's what they say.
Yes.
So that's why they keep citing back to the GCA, saying, well, this is what the GCA says, and this is what the ATF said. And the ATF is a perfectly reasonable organization. You should totally trust them. And their interpretation of what the GCA was, or should have been, or could have been, whatever, was fine. It was totally fine. It didn't violate the Administrative Procedures Act.
Okay, so and I'm glad you gave that layman's explanation, because that is like literally what happened.
Yes.
But like philosophically, I'm not okay with that, because here's me. All right, so by this weird contortion, he somehow uses this IKEA table, and you tell your friend that you just bought a table, even though it's not a table
Right.
yet. Just like you told your friend you bought a gun, even though it was just parts and it's not a gun yet.
Yeah.
Therefore, the box of parts is a table, and the box of parts is a gun.
Yeah.
So he's going through all this, and I'm thinking, okay, first of all, I don't think Gorsuch made a compelling argument. And
no, it's terrible.
Neither did Thomas or Alito. But let's just say that I grant him that premise. Just this is under hypothetical, guys. I'm arguing in the alternative, as lawyers call it. So, well, what if I granted him the premise and said, fine, whatever. This completely complies with the Gun Control Act of 1968, which, by the way, is unconstitutional in and of itself, because the Constitution says shall not be infringed. Marbury v. Madison would say that the Gun Control Act of 68 is null and void. Do you see where I'm heading with all this?
Yeah, no, I got it. I don't know what to tell you, but I understand where you're going with it.
Okay, no, I do have a question, though.
Yeah.
Because I know we agree, like, personally and philosophically, which is awesome. But okay, you're a lawyer. You've been in front of some of these high courts. You've been in front of federal courts, district judges. You've been under appeals courts, circuit level. What if a guy like you stands up there in the proper format, and just says, hold on, Your Honor, and just kind of says what I just said in plain English? Would you get laughed out, thrown out, or would they just shake? Like why can't lawyers just do that and win cases?
Yeah, so I've done that before in the Fifth Circuit, and the Third Circuit, and the Ninth Circuit, Second Circuit, in a lot of circuits. And I brought 2 machine gun cases back in 2014 or 2015. Again, I don't remember all the different dates of the cases that I've been involved in, but I brought 2 cases, one in the Northern District of Texas, which is a good district, and one in Eastern District of Pennsylvania, not so good district, over the Form 1 machine guns. Do you remember, like 10 years ago, a whole bunch of people started applying for Form 1s on trusts, and then the ATF actually approved some?
I do. Yeah.
So I took those cases and sued the ATF and said, you can't take these stamps away from these people. One of my clients built his machine gun, a 2014 stamped Form 1 machine gun, and my other client didn't. And then they wanted to take his machine gun back and revoke his stamp, and they said they revoked his stamp. So I sued them, and I went in the Fifth Circuit and just literally said, 922-0 is unconstitutional. And this is pre-Bruen, but post-Heller. But even Heller gave me enough information to say that machine guns are protected. If the Second Amendment covers prima facie all bearable arms, then a machine gun is certainly a bearable arm, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't argue that it's not. Yeah. And so then at that point, the Fifth Circuit unanimously ruled against me. The Third Circuit ruled against me. We sought en banc review in both courts, and both courts denied it. I didn't have one dissent, not one dissent. So the best Fifth Circuit judge in 2015, when we went on appeal, still would have ruled against me. The best Third Circuit judge, when we appealed in 2015, would have ruled against me. And that goes for like almost all of them. Like I don't know that I can physically name you a judge right now that would take a machine gun case, except for Carlton Reeves in Mississippi. Carlton Reeves ruled that a guy's possession of a machine gun in the Southern District of Mississippi, he dismissed his indictment for possession of a machine gun because this guy possessed it in his home. Yeah. But Judge Reeves hates Bruen, hates it. and calls it out every chance he gets. So it's almost like a gambit for him. It's like, oh, okay, you like Bruen so much? Well, here you go, Fifth Circuit. I'm going to rule against the government in this case. So hopefully that it gets some kind of appellate review. Just like Miller. Remember Miller from 1939?
Yes.
When the dudes died before their appeal and the Supreme Court's like, that's totally fine. We're going to go ahead and hear this case anyway and rule in favor of the government.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that. And the other interesting thing about Miller is they were saying, well, a short barrel shotgun, that doesn't really have any military use.
Yes.
And the Second Amendment protects arms suitable for military service.
Yeah.
And from what I recall, it's been a while since I've read Miller, judges were kind of sitting there at a certain point being like, hey, if you can give us any examples where these are commonly used in militaries, we might be able to rule the other way.
Yeah, but I did that in the Fifth Circuit and the Third Circuit. I specifically cited to Miller and said, if we have this arm that's used in the military, then it's protected under Miller, period. I don't care what Heller said. Heller did not overrule Miller.
That's the thing. I know that the caveat with Heller, and I kind of look at it as I look at it as a little bit of a poison pill, and you might disagree with me. A lot of people do, but with the majority opinion, when he wrote that it doesn't protect potentially dangerous and unusual weapons, it had to meet both. I thought, I'm like, well, hold on a minute though, because that kind of seemed to be a shot at Miller, because certainly most people would consider a military firearm to be dangerous, extra dangerous, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like, here's the thing though, like I still go back to the Second Amendment itself. It doesn't say shall not be infringed, comma, unless it's particularly dangerous and unusual.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't say that. I've checked.
So do you agree maybe that's a slight part of Heller, where we still appreciate the case as its totality? Maybe that was a little bit of a step in the wrong direction, that line?
I think I don't know if it was a step in the wrong direction. I think it was unnecessary to the overall aspect of the case. A lot of these judges like to place what we call dicta in the opinion. So they're like Bruen footnote 9, where they talk about all of these other 43 states licensing programs. The anti-gunners have just glommed on to footnote 9 in Bruen, saying, oh, they've approved of all of these other states, and their licensing processes have all been approved by the Supreme Court. And I'm like, no, they haven't. The Supreme Court was only looking at New York's licensing process. It didn't look at Rhode Island's or Massachusetts or any of these other commie states. It just looked at the commie state of New York.
Yeah, that's because people just call it the Bruen case, but it's the NYSERPA, the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. New York. Yeah. So that was within
Bruen.
the realm.
Yeah. V. Bruen.
Bruen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. V. Bruen. Yeah. Which was representing New York, obviously.
Yeah. He's a superintendent of state police.
Okay. So with that said, where do you think we're at with the courts? Is there ever going to be, is my first question. And if not, how close can we get to just like the lawsuit that's just going to end gun control? Like when does this just end? Because we don't need to sue anymore. You know what I'm saying?
I understand your question.
Okay.
I don't think that we will get to the point where everything's done. I would love it to be able to do, like, I don't know. I mean, I really like doing Second Amendment work because it's fun, but sure. I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, let's install some more regulations so I can sue because I just want to get paid more. You know, I would love for me to be out of a job tomorrow because I've done my work and I've cleared all of the bad laws, and now we're free. Like, we're back in 1791. You want a gun? Go get one, you know? So I look at it like this, and I can't remember who I said this to, if it wasn't to a court or if it was to someone else, I don't know. Back then, you stole, like, we didn't have cars in 1791, but you had a horse and someone stole your horse, they would put you to death. Now you steal a car, like in California, they're like, oh, well, I guess it's not your car anymore. Instead of like enforcing the law and taking these people out of the gene pool, like removing them from the gene pool. If we got rid of the violent people. You know, you want to go murder someone because you think it's fun, you want to do a TikTok about it or something, you need to be executed. You need to be removed, or sent to CICOT in El Salvador. You know, I'm fine with that.
Right.
And then the people that are not in prison are presumptively not dangerous people. If you're so dangerous, it was on a news station. If you're so dangerous that you can't be trusted with a gun, you need to be in prison. If you've done something so bad, I can tell you some crimes, but I'm sure you could probably think of them. Like murder, you murder someone, man, off with their head, kill them. Like, I'm sorry, like this is how it has to be.
Process of law, of course.
Yeah, I mean, we can't just go around killing people, you know, because then we wouldn't be any better than them. But you go through court, you're found guilty, you get your appeal, and then.
No, I hear you, and I talk about this all the time. I was literally talking about it last Friday, and I think every Friday. Look, here's the problem with gun control. First of all, these laws only affect the law-abiding because criminals, by their very nature, don't follow laws.
That's right.
And the Second Amendment applies to everybody. Literally, I believe it's an inherent right that supersedes any government, including our own. Like, even wild animals understand they have the natural right to protect themselves with lethal force if necessary. But the problem is this: there's evil people out there. There truly are,
and they're in our government too.
Yeah.
Gretchen Whitmer is an evil person. I'm sorry, and if you know. I just think that she's an evil person. I watched her all through COVID. Even my governor in Mississippi was an evil governor. Like all of the governors were. And I know that some of them weren't as bad as others, like Gavin Newsom, who's sending cops out to arrest people on the beach. And then that idiot was going to the French whatever cafe without his mask on, but forcing everyone else. Man, let me tell you what. I bounced around internationally all through COVID because the courts were closed. And you know, like I was doing stuff overseas, I had to wear masks on like 30-hour from point A to point B, and it was miserable, absolutely miserable. And then I see Gavin Newsom out there enjoying his nice little red wine Chianti. No, like they're going to make him president in 2028. Like I just find that despicable. And then we have all these other people that follow people like him, Gretchen Whitmer, Kathy Hochul, gross. AOC, disgusting.
Exactly. And I say that frequently. I'm like, look, these are not good looking people, not on the inside or out. They're just repugnant. But here's my big thing. It's like, look, the right exists. However, here in America, we do have that you can be taken away. Well, the government has a process where basically, and it's supposed to be, well, let me just back up real quick here. Look at the Blackstone principle. He said it's better that 10 guilty people would get away before one innocent person would ever suffer. And then Ben Franklin went on to say what he thought maybe it should be 100 guilty. It should be set free before one innocent person should suffer. But through due process of law, you can be taken of your property, your liberty, and your life.
Sure.
So where it is true, they can disarm somebody of their property, of the gun, while they're in prison, while they're preferably awaiting their death sentence if they're murdering, doing things that might even be worse than that in some cases. The right still always exists. So the argument is this: if somebody's too dangerous to be among us, and I'm just kind of reparaphrasing what you've already said because we think exactly alike on this, by the way. I'm like, dude, if somebody's too dangerous to be among us, why are they allowed to be among us, right?
Yes.
Because like Cain killed Abel with a stone.
Yes.
So like this is literally just insane, and gun control never works, and it never ever will.
Well, don't remind Newsom that Cain killed Abel with a stone, because then you're going to ban rocks, and that would be really hard in California. But he would try it.
No, that's what's so crazy, guys. This is like funny, not funny. Yeah. I say that as kind of like an FU, like, haha. Cain killed Abel with a stone. I dare you to ban rocks. I'm a landscaper. They probably would ban rocks. Whitmer would too.
Yeah, no, Whitmer would be like, yeah, you're going to jail for life. And then the guy that just stole all of your gear is going to be, you know, out on the streets again with a $10 bail.
Okay, well, I better shut up because literally tomorrow my job is to install like 4 yards of this decorative black granite gravel for a customer. Ooh, I need to get it in quick so it's pre-ban rocks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, each rock has to be serialized too. You need a permit for each one that you buy.
Man, I hope they have a grandfather clause.
Yeah.
But
God.
but anyways, we've been talking almost an hour already. Wow.
Yeah.
I guess let's just kind of wrap this up in a second. There was actually a case you helped with I wanted to talk about, but
Yeah.
maybe you can, I don't know, do you want to just come on another time when we
Yeah,
get
I'd
a
love
chance?
to.
And
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've got tons of cases. So, I know that we've talked before about some of this stuff. I've done a ton of FOIA work, and I do like FOIA, the Freedom of Information Act stuff. And I've done a ton of Second Amendment stuff. Alan Beck and I crisscrossed the entire country, cleaning up all of the stun gun bans and taser bans post Saitano from 2016, except for New York City. And you know what the New York City judge did just like last week? He ruled that the New York City stun gun law was constitutional, even though every single court has declared it unconstitutional. A New York City judge said, "Oh, it's totally fine.
so
Not an infringement."
Saitano Supreme Court, though, that was the Alito decision, I believe, was the
It was a
author.
per curiam, meaning that it didn't have anyone that signed the opinion saying who wrote it, but Alito concurred and said, I mean,
Oh,
they didn't hold that stun guns were protected, but Alito went through it, and it's like there's 200,000 stun guns in the United States. They're in common use for self-defense, et cetera, et cetera. Heller says this. They're prima facie protected by the Second Amendment. This New York City judge is like, that's not good enough. It's not a majority opinion. It's not good enough. Now, let me tell you, if there was a dissenting opinion or a concurrence the other way, like Kavanaugh's concurrence in Bruen, all of these judges, all of them will glom onto his concurrence in Bruen and say, but Judge Kavanaugh in Bruen said that we can have lots of different types of gun laws.
but his concurrence is technically dicta per se. It's not
100%.
It's not binding,
it's not binding at all. Not at all.
Setting.
Yeah, not at all. And Sotomayor and Bondi v. Vanderstock specifically said that concurrences are not binding, because what she was doing is she was attacking Justice Thomas's dissent.
Interesting. Yeah, I did notice that. She'll do that, but then here's the thing, though. These people ebb and flow like the tides, and then when it's to her advantage, she'll switch back and say, well, my powerful dissent, that is something lower courts should be arguing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I know. It's like, it's so much hypocrisy. Like, it knows no bounds.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, but no, I would love to come on again.
Yeah, man, because we've been on for almost an hour. We got just a couple minutes here. Let me see if there's any quick questions. Fun to learn. Thank you for the super chat, man. I appreciate it. Thank you. I saw a lot of people in here earlier. Kurt24 became a channel member and said, great guest.
Oh, yeah, I'm a great guest. Thank you.
No, dude, like I know we're like both really busy, and you've been working since the wee hours of the morning. You wake up so early, but
woke up at 3.
Well, there you go. There's man.
And I'm gonna do a live on the New York City mayor after this on my own channel at 7:15. So I mean, I've got a little bit more gas in my tank, and then I'm gonna just crash.
Well, we're gonna jump off in just a second here, but make sure you guys go over to his channel. The link is right there in the title. Actually, you can just go into YouTube and type in the @ symbol 2A Law. Because, like, I couldn't spell your name.
Me neither.
So, well, you can't either. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you another personal question, because I'm just thinking to myself, can we call you Stambo?
Yeah. In fact, most people call me Stambo.
Okay, because that's like a totally cool nickname. Like, I would give anything to have the nickname Stambo. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. No, I could change your name for you.
Yeah. Oh, I need to get a hold of a lawyer that can change my name to Stambo.
Change your name.
Geez, I'll have to. Hopefully, I can meet a lawyer someday.
Licensed in Michigan. I'm not licensed in Michigan. It's like one state I'm not in.
Fred S., thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it, man. So there was a couple people in the chat here, and I just wanted to real quick saying stuff like, can you help me with this case or that case, or how do we get a hold of you? If somebody has something that's, can you just give us the quick 1-minute rundown on what type of law you actually practice in and how they can get a hold of you if they wanted to?
I'll put my email address in the chat unless you tell me that's a bad idea.
YouTube may actually block it, but try to do it. And maybe my mods can let it through. So go ahead and try.
Okay. That's my email address. So if someone has a specific question, I'm happy to look at it. I can't provide you legal advice because I'm not licensed in Michigan. So let me just make sure that you understand that I'm not licensed in Michigan. My main license is out of Mississippi, and I'm licensed in about 30 federal courts, all circuit courts of appeal and the Supreme Court, but not Michigan. But I can help you find an attorney, and I've got attorneys in Michigan who are licensed there, obviously. And maybe if there was something that I could just connect you to someone else, I do a lot of that. So,
okay. And John Q. Public, which is a local Michigan resident here, thank you for the super chat, John. And he says, I will be a plaintiff for Mr. Stambolier for my MCL 75227 CCW vehicle provision case since I have standing in Michigan. Now, I think you kind of already answered that, but this is a criminal case and he's in Michigan, so you probably can't help with that, unfortunately.
I can't help with that. But I mean, if he has a lawyer already, they don't really like you talking to other lawyers. But if you don't have a lawyer, feel free to email me and I'll look at it. And if I can match you to somebody, I'm happy to do it.
Okay. No, that's cool. Because there were people kind of asking about like, what could you do to help us here with certain things going on? And it's like, well, if you're licensed in Michigan, you are, but if you're not, you're not. It's just the way it works, unfortunately, right?
Yeah, but again, like my email's there. So if they're like, oh, I want to sue over this, I'm like, man, email me, because I know a lot of people. It doesn't even have to be in Michigan, because I'm sure your audience is bigger than just Michigan. But
yes,
if you got someone in California or Hawaii or I hate that state, New York, or I hate that state too. Wherever you are, I'm happy to point you in the right direction. If I can't help you, I probably know someone I might know someone that could help you.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate all of you guys hanging out live tonight. I think we had a good time, and I'd like to have you on again, because I think we can talk some more about a few cool things.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, is there anything else you wanted to say before we sign off? Or
it said my address got removed. It's Stephen, STEPHEN at sdslaw.us. sdslaw.us.
Okay, that's so go back and rewind, and let's play that back if you guys need to.
Yep.
And yeah, my moderator Mateo, he said it never made it in. It's YouTube that mixes those.
No worries. But
because I think it's a URL, because it has the, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. And I mean, they could find me on my channel at 2A Law, and then I'd be happy to talk. You know, I always talk to people. I'm not the attorney that just was like, give me money so I could talk. I'm not like that.
Yeah, we did no ad reads tonight. Neither of us did. And I saw some guys in the chat kind of joking around saying, buy my t-shirt, do this and that. Well, I don't even have any merch for sale. And so, yeah, we're all on the same page. We're just doing what we can. But I do appreciate all of the generous support you guys have thrown in there, because although we don't beg for money here, it is not free to do a channel like this either. So thank you, Mitten State Media. Yeah, dude, you were an awesome guest, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, dude. My pleasure. We'll do it again. I'm gonna bounce. I can hit the restroom and then start my own stuff.
All right, head over to his channel, guys. Link is literally right in the title, and maybe I'll see some of you guys in the chat over there.
All right, y'all take care.
All right, I'll see you.
Take care.
All right, guys, I will see you all Friday night, and I'm gonna jump over and watch his live stream. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good one.